And it's all capitals, right? I mean,
No, capital D.
I'm going to call the meeting of the Select Board to order. We have with us this evening the School Committee and the Finance Committee. I'd invite you both to open your meetings as well if you'd like. We're not going to hit your business until a couple of minutes from now, so I defer to you, respective chairs.
So I'll open the meeting of the Finance Committee. We have a forum.
Okay, great.
I just did.
Great, all right, so we're all open. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. See the flag right over there. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thanks for pac-tv for being here and covering us this evening. We're all pretty well mic'd up here at the table. Folks who are going to be speaking to us tonight, there's a mic at the front of the room. Please speak to the mic. We can hear you in here, but the folks who are watching online and will watch the recording won't be able to hear you unless you speak into the mic. So we just ask you to do that. All right. And speaking of speaking into the mic, how's that? Better? Okay, great. All right. So this is a joint meeting of the Select Board, School Committee, and Finance Committee. With the permission of my colleagues and the other boards, I would like to take a couple of matters out of order so we can move them along rather than have them sit through the fiscal 27 budget meeting discussion. I see nodding. We're in good shape, right? We will do open forum next. All right, so first we'll start with open forum, where we'll ask our colleagues on the Select Board if they have anything to pass along to the rest of us, things that are not on the agenda, things for future agendas, that sort of thing, and I will start from my right.
I have nothing.
Okay.
I don't, you were going to say something about the beach party, right?
Amy is, yeah.
Great.
Wanted to just a shout out to the 4th of July Parade Committee for another extremely successful event, which was this past beach party. It was attended by Many went off without a hitch, and it's a great community event, and we thank them all for their hard work. And it is hard work, but that is a really fun committee. If anybody is anxious to join that committee, they're always looking for volunteers. So thank you to them for that. I also want to just update everyone on the employee survey that Cindy and I have been working towards, and have been getting assistance from Rainey and Jeannie Horn, and an outside entity which is going to conduct the survey. We are moving forward with that, and I'm hopeful that Rainey will have some updated information in his town manager report. That's all I have. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Mike?
Just wanted to echo Amy's congratulations to the 4th of July committee, but I also wanted to congratulate or thank our fire department, our police department, and our DPW, as well as our town manager and Mary. This was no small feat this year, particularly with the crunch, and also the community. There were, I anecdotally heard about twice as many donations this year to the 4th of July committee, the Marjorie Parcher Fund, and it was a huge success and a safe event for everyone. So I just wanted to.
Thank you. And I believe we have Cindy online. Cindy?
Yeah, hi. No, I have nothing tonight, but thank you for remembering me.
Okay, great. I have a few, and I understand we don't have announcements on tonight's agenda, so I have a couple of things that I'll just remind folks about. First is the 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony. That will be held on Thursday at 9 a.m. at the Duxbury Fire Station. Next, on Friday at 5 p.m. is the ribbon cutting for the Harbor Walk by the Rural and Historical Society. And finally, Duxbury is hosting its 5th annual Historic Preservation Day. That's on Saturday, the 13th, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. There'll be a lecture by Matt Murphy of North Bennett Street School on preservation carpentry at 10 a.m. There'll be a historic boat tour on the bay. To register for the boat tour, please go to the Historic District Commission's website. There is a registration form available there. There are also other events throughout the day and historic home tours. And then, not getting too far ahead of ourselves, but our next select board meeting will be on Monday the 15th at 6:30 p.m. at Town Hall. Anything from the public for open forum for the select board? Mike, go ahead.
Really omitted one further party. Beach ops for the beach party.
Yes.
They were wonderful. Artie and Steve were really stepped up, and so did their staff.
Thanks, Mike. Great point. I saw a hand in the back. Yes, please come up to the mic, introduce yourself, and hit us with what you got.
Good evening, Jared Collingwood. I live in West Street. I'm here tonight as a parent of 2 children in the Duxbury Public Schools and a teacher at Alden. I would like to start by thanking all of you for the time that you've put towards the community of Duxbury. I know you, like myself, want to protect and support all aspects that make this the thriving community that we all want to be a part of. I recognize the vital part that each department plays in maintaining a thriving community. While my family may not directly utilize every service, we deeply value their contributions to Duxbury's quality of life and support funding to benefit all residents. However, I'm concerned that some community members are prioritizing certain departments over others, leaving some of our most vulnerable citizens, our students, at a disadvantage. As a parent of a current 8th grader, it was frustrating to watch my son pass a stamp test, earn the right to take high school honors Spanish, only to receive an email that said he couldn't due to budget cuts. At Alden, this year classes have grown to 22 or more students. As we continue as teachers to meet the students' need, make lasting impacts, and foster meaningful relationships, these goals become increasingly challenges with these large classes. I urge you to prioritize adequate funding for our students because they deserve the funding. They need to be supported from this community. We are the adults, the role models. We must make the difficult decision to step up and fund all of our departments appropriately. To preserve the Duxbury that we all cherish, whether for those that have lived here for generations or for families like myself who moved here because of this community, it must be supported in all aspects, and we must not prioritize one department over another. Thank you for your time and commitment to serving all of Duxbury citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for open forum for the select board? Yes, sir, please come up.
Brian, they don't do Q&A during their things. Parents come up at the beginning. So you might want to cut this off because it's on.
Hi there, my name is Stephen Cass. I was a longtime resident of Duxbury. I live in Orleans now. I'm here at the suggestion of several friends who asked me to come speak on the athletic facilities situation in Duxbury. First of all, I'm pleased to be back in my first grade classroom. It's hard to figure out where 52 years went, but pretty sure this is where I was. So just about me and my family. My father was a longtime coach here. He won almost 1,000 games. His rock is out there on Train Field. My mother started the Antique Show, which I think still goes, and I was one of the first 5 inductees into the Duxbury Athletic Hall of Fame. My background athletically, I got my MBA from Ohio State in athletic administration and finance. I worked on lots of athletic projects for Buckeye Nation. When I lived in San Francisco, the gentleman who owned the wine shop right below my apartment, we had a deal. He could use my driveway, my garage when I was at work, and his name was Gavin Newsom. And he ended up hiring me to be his athletic facility consultant for 8 years with San Francisco. Served on some projects for Yale University, multiple private schools, and I've also been a public school business manager. So that's kind of my background real quick. So I know in the next year on your agenda, athletic facilities is a priority of sorts. I also understand you have all kinds of budget issues, from the override to the bridge and all kinds of other things. And I'm here to, I guess, to tell you this is something I have great expertise at. And I'd love to help you figure out a way to get your athletic facilities done in a cost and time effective way. That's the whole challenge. Get the great head start by the DRC, get it down to 5 to 7 million, and try to get these facilities done while the people who are passionate about it still have kids in school. You'd be amazed how many times people start a project and their kids are long gone. To get this done, start with your low-hanging fruit, and there's lots of it around town. You want to prioritize your building around the schools, because around the schools, you have all the expensive infrastructure in place. You have bathrooms, you have parking, people are okay with lights, and there are a lot of great things you can do with this property before you start cutting down forests or doing other big projects. So there's some really great opportunity here. I just love seeing all the flag football kids when I drove in. Also, there are things you can do to make the space look more like Duxbury. Train Field, that's the closest thing you have to a village green. It should look really sharp when you drive in there. Beautiful fencing, not a lot of chain link. It should be your village green, and I think there's really some room for improvement there. Obviously, a second turf field in town is a priority. Not 3, not 4, not 5, but having a second one. That'll absorb a lot of the demand in early spring when the fields are wet. It will also deal with the crunch time in the fall when you have football, soccer, and field hockey trying to share fields at the high school. There are some really inexpensive changes here that could make a huge difference. And the key to this is do the best with what you have already. Don't try to reinvent the wheel, and get it done in a fairly quick manner. Would love to help you. I spent a lot of years in this community. Love this town. Probably no family had more passion for Duxbury sports. And again, I'm here because a number of my friends had said, why don't you come speak? And so would love to help, and you guys do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nancy, do we have anybody online? Okay, and I don't see anyone else for open forum. So we'll move into what will be our first order of business this evening. I will take out of order the discussion regarding the bond document debt signing. It's listed as Mary presenting, but we're going to have Corey Lydon, our treasurer, presenting this evening.
Team effort, yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
And thank you for allowing me to jump the agenda.
And before you say anything, I want to acknowledge all the work that's gone into this. This is no small task by the finance team. It's a tremendous lift, and as we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, there was really something to brag about here. And I will mention just as an aside, but related, I spoke with an acquaintance who's a bond broker in the big city, said that he heard about Duxbury's bonds hitting the street, so to speak. They were very well received and complimented us at having a AAA bond rating and reminded me that that saved us at least a quarter of a point. So that was unsolicited from somebody who's in the business. So I wanted to just mention that at the beginning. With that, Corey, please go right ahead.
Thank you so much. Corey Leiden, I'm the town treasurer. Tonight, the board is being asked to authorize the net issuance of $20,655,000 in general obligation bonds scheduled to be funded to the town on September 17th, 2025. This follows a successful bond sale held last Wednesday, during which the town received 12 competitive bids, an outcome driven by its continued AAA rating from S&P Global. As Brian had mentioned, that is the highest rating possible. The lowest bid was submitted by SWBC Investments, offering true interest costs of 3.6%. So this issuance, the total proceeds of this bond sale will be used to partially fund the DPW facility of about $13 million, partially fund the seawall repairs of approximately $6.5 million, fund the PFAS of $1 million, and a brush breaker for the fire department and the amount of $488,000.
All right, and you certainly gave us plenty to read. Thank you. We read through all of it. And I know there were some general questions, and Corey, maybe you can answer some of these. And Mary, you and I discussed this already. There was a question about the rate that we're getting of 3.6. And how we square that with some of the notes at being 5%, 4.25%. How did we get to the 3.6% overall?
Mm-hmm. I'll take that, but Mike, did you want to?
Yeah, I just to clarify that what Corey just stated and what was in our memo, we talked about a 3.67 rate. The table we got in the schedule had 4.5 to 5%. If you could explain that to the public.
Yeah. So in the documents, and it's a pretty thick stack of documents that we're asking you guys to execute this evening and sign, there's lots of different schedules. And one of the schedules that you'll notice is when the debt is issued, there are coupon rates for each note that is being issued. There's 21 notes, and there's varying coupon rates that go from 5% to 4-point-something%. But what happened with the 12 competitive bidders is that bidders who are looking for the tax-exempt benefit of municipal bonds, and that's the benefit of us issuing debt to the open market, is that there are people who are interested in purchasing our debt in order to take advantage of the tax-exempt status. Those bidders often pay a premium because they want to win the bid in order to purchase the bonds and receive that tax-exempt status. So the amount of the premium, in this case, the winning bidder offered the largest premium and the best deal. That premium then gets assigned to the debt issuance, the sale of $21.7 million in general obligation bonds. That premium gets assigned to it and resizes the debt, paying off effectively part of the interest that would have been due, and therefore reducing the coupon rates down to a net effective interest rate of 3.6%.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Go right ahead.
Town meeting approved the seawall with a 25% betterment.
Correct.
How will that be assessed and paid up against our debt here?
So right now, the seawall project is under construction, and we will wait until that project is completed until we know the total project costs. So town meeting authorized initially $20 million for the project. We then recently rescinded $5 million of that borrowing authorization, so we have $15 million worth of borrowing authorization. We also received a $3 million environmental affairs grant, which we have taken advantage of, and we've submitted expenses for all $3 million to date. So that $3 million will come off the top of the project cost, and then whatever the ending or final project costs are that we need to finance, then once that number is known, then 25% of that will be assessed in the form of betterments to the folks who live in that area or own property in that area. I don't know whether they live in them or not. to the property owners in that area. They will be assessed a betterment, and my expectation is that that will go on to the Q3 FY27 tax bill, because the seawall is expected to be completed at the end of this year. So we will know the total project costs in order to calculate those betterments and assign them to the FY27 tax bill.
So the issuing of this bond isn't impacted? I mean, isn't impacting those betterments?
It is not. So the betterments have not been created. The amounts will not be known until the total project cost, because then we allocate 25% of that to the folks who are impacted. This debt issuance tonight of $6.5 million is only, essentially half of the total project cost. The remainder will be issued in the next set of debt that we go out to the market with.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Other questions from the board on the bonds? Or Cindy? I don't want to forget Cindy.
She's on the screen behind you.
No, and I'm behind you.
She is? Okay.
No, I'm all set, Brian, thank you.
Okay, great. Anything else, Corey, you'd like to add?
Nope, I'm all set, thank you.
All right, well done. Thank you very much. May I have a motion?
Yes, I move that we approve that the sale of the $20,655,000 general obligation municipal purpose loan of 2025 bonds of the town dated September 17th, 2025, open brackets, the bonds, close brackets, to SWBC Investment Services, LLC, at a price of $21,901,584.94. And accrued interest is hereby approved and confirmed. The bonds shall be payable on September 15 of the years and in the principal amounts, and bear interest at the respective rates as outlined in the vote of the Select Board. And further, that the notice of sale and preliminary official statement dated August 27, 2025, and a final official statement dated September 3, 2025, as approved by the Town Treasurer, are hereby ratified, approved, and adopted. And further, that the Town Clerk, Town Treasurer, and Select Board are hereby authorized to execute the following: continuing disclosure certificate, signature, no litigation, and official statement certificate, tax certificate, vote of the Select Board certificate. And further, that we authorize and direct the Treasurer to establish and hold post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures and continuing disclosure procedures in such form as the Treasurer and Bond Counsel deem sufficient. And further, that any certificates or documents related to the bonds may be executed in several counterparts, each of which shall be regarded as an original, and all of which shall constitute one and the same document. And delivery of an executed counterpart of a signature page to a document by electronic mail in a PDF file shall be as effective as delivery of a manually executed counterpart signature page to such document. And further, that each member of the Select Board, the Town Clerk, and the Town Treasurer are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents associated with these votes and related debt sale.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's a roll call vote.
Aye.
Will it be a roll call vote, Nancy?
Yeah,
Because,
Cindy
yeah,
is-
Fernando, aye.
Oh, yes. Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Fernando.
You're welcome.
All right, that takes care of that matter. Do we have anybody here this evening from Roland Historical Society about the Harbor Walk liquor license? Okay, we can take that later. So now we'll move into the fiscal year 27 budget discussion with the Finance Committee and the School Committee. Who'd like to kick us off?
That would be me. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mary McKinnon. I'm the Finance Director. If we are here tonight to talk about the next budget cycle, then that means that summer is over. Sorry, guys. Before I get started, logistics, is my slide deck showing on so you guys can see? Fantastic. All right. Before I go through that, for folks who are either following along at home or who are going to listen to this later, I want to just point out that the slide deck itself is posted on the town's website along with a calendar. So if you are looking for this information, and if you go to the town's website, go to the Finance Department page, there are links here for town budget. And if you click town budget, this link right here is the forecast that we are going to be discussing this evening. And this link here is a budget calendar that, given the stage that we are in our budget process, after we finish tonight, the next set of public meetings will be Finance Committee meetings. This is the current etched in pencil schedule of the Finance Committee. So if you want to plan out your calendar in order to be able to participate, go ahead and check that link. I will be updating it as we start to, as life happens and we need to start to negotiate schedules. But that is one place where you can go look for a comprehensive schedule for all of the public budget discussions. With that being said, let me close this. And we'll flip back over here. All righty. And did you guys grab, there were some extra copies of the handouts up here? Okay, so everyone's set. There we go. All right, so tonight what we're going to talk about is, first of all, our budget timeline. And there's many steps in the process as we work our way as a community through development of the budget for FY27. We have literally just cracked the seal on the FY26 budget, and here we are already starting to plan for FY27. So we will go through an updated timeline of milestones. We will then take a look at an updated forecast. So a forecast was previously presented to the Select Board back in the months of May and June. That has been updated as of today, and we will go through and highlight some of those changes. And then we will talk about our sources of funding that are available to support our operations or support our general fund operating budget. Tonight's conversation is focused strictly on revenues. As we go through the course of the next 6 months of budget discussions, we will shift gears and focus to expenditures and talk about department needs and requirements. But in order to place enough emphasis on the available funding that is used to support our operation, we typically start our budget process off with a focused discussion just on our revenue sources. So that's what we're going to do tonight. All right, for our budget timeline, as I said, we started this process back in May, even before FY26 had started. And we had a few discussions with the Select Board. I believe we had 3 different meetings where we presented a budget forecast at that time with the information that was known, along with some additional departmental information, headcounts, and organizational structures. And over the course of those 3 meetings with the Select Board, there was a discussion about budget priorities as we begin to think about crafting the FY27 budget. From those meetings with the Select Board, the town manager issued his budget message on August 5th, which officially kicked off the process for all of our department heads. Since that time, our department heads have been actively building their budget requests using our product called ClearGov. And now that I say that, at the end of the meeting, remind me to show you ClearGov, because I don't have a note here in front of me. Okay, thank you. So our department heads have been actively building their budgets in our ClearGov tool, and tonight we are not going to focus on expenditures because it is far too premature. We have not finished all of that budget development, and I have not taken a deep dive into the requests that the departments have put together. So tonight is revenues only. So we are now at our 4th milestone, which is September 8th, to talk about our revenue forecast update. And beyond that, what will happen is that the town manager and I will be meeting individually with the department heads to review their requests and refine those requests. The Finance Committee will begin their budget cycle of meeting with the department heads beginning in October. The school committee will be presenting, Dr. Klingeman will be presenting her draft or her recommended budget to the school committee in November. And then in December, at the December 10th meeting, the school committee will make their formal recommendation for their FY27 budget request. All of that information will then be distilled down into a balanced budget that will be presented by the town manager to the select board on December 15th. And from that point, we will then begin to review and fine-tune a budget that will be presented to town meeting in March. So that's our timeline. Any questions on that? Yes, Mike.
Mary, will there be an opportunity between the town manager draft budget and the finance committee recommendations for some input from the select board?
There has to be.
So that is a very good,
has to
you're
be. I
jumping
just
all the
without-
way down to my last slide. And my very last slide is called Next Steps. And so my expectation is that I will be coming with the town manager before the select board in October to give you an update of where we stand, because we will have had an opportunity to begin to look at those departmental requests and sort of see the scope or the magnitude of what we're facing for an FY27 budget. Okay?
Excellent. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, I just had a question. Could you just give us just a summary of what those priorities are?
For the select board priorities? I can. Does the select board want to speak for themselves, or do you want me to do it?
Go ahead, Fernando. We had,
Yeah.
We had a meeting.
we had
this
the
week.
list handy.
Yep.
We did reduce
right
it to
here.
writing.
Right. Key priorities for the upcoming fiscal year include, in order, funding compulsory fixed and shared costs, including debt service, pension assessments, health insurance, property insurance, state and / county assessments, Chapter 115, veterans benefits, Mass DOT requires street lighting, Medicare payroll taxes, and compliance with the Clean Water Act. And then maintaining fiscal year 26 staffing levels in the police, fire, and highway departments, preserving core educational services while managing the budgetary impact to no more than 3% over fiscal year 26 funding levels, and identifying necessary reductions across all other departments and services. We understand that the need for a conservative budget may require difficult decisions and sacrifices. However, we are committed to working together to navigate these challenges and emerge stronger.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so moving on. What you're looking at here is a high-level snapshot of our revenue forecast collapsed down into our 5 funding categories: taxes, debt exclusion, state aid, local receipts, and other funds. Why is my keyboard not working? There we go. Okay. What I have also dropped in is a one line for expenditures. That expenditure projection that you're seeing is using the assumptions that were built into the forecast and applied to the department's FY26 budgets. So we know the results of the FY26 adopted budget from town meeting. There were a set of assumptions that were discussed back in May and June. Those assumptions were applied to the department's FY26 budget and resulted in a projected or anticipated expenditure amount. However, I will call your attention to a couple of things. Number one, the deficit that is being shown at the bottom, those amounts are going to change. So please do not quote that that is the amount of the structural deficit. That is expected to change as soon as we start to drop in the department's actual requests. That is a placeholder for you to visually see how the process works. The second thing is that I have 2 columns for FY27. The third column of numbers is labeled Estimate FY27, and just to the right of it is another column of FY27, and that is, I did take a look at ClearGov yesterday, and for some of the departments that had finished, including some of the amounts that I calculate for shared costs, I did drop in actual expenditures and apply it to the forecast. So that is sort of a work in progress for FY27 budgetary purposes. Does that make sense? Okay. So the highlight here is that our funding sources for FY27 are up 4.57% over FY26. Now, don't get too excited about that, because that does not necessarily mean that we are generating all sorts of new revenue through new revenue sources. The biggest contributor to that increase in funding sources is actually the second line, which is called debt exclusion. So you will see that our debt exclusion amounts increased significantly from FY26 to FY27, and that is a result of the action that just took place this evening, which is signing $21.7 million worth of general obligation bonds. Okay? So when we talk about our funding sources, there are essentially 5 categories through which our budget is supported. The largest and most stable funding source is our tax levy, and that comprises 72.2% of all of our revenues used to support our general fund. The next category is local receipts at 9.7%. Those are the items that we, for the most part, control here at the local level. Those are things like fees and fines, licenses, permits, and other programs, and we're going to take a look at some of those in a little bit more detail shortly. Next category is exempt debt, which is voter-approved debt-financed projects, such as the middle school, high school, the seawall, the DPW facility, and I will show you a list of those when we get to the end of the presentation. That comprises 7.6% of our funding sources. State aid comprises 9.3%, and all other available funds, which are funds on hand that are used for specific purposes, represents 1.2% of our overall funding for the estimated FY27 budget. And we're going to dive into each.
Quick question, Mary?
Sure.
Thanks. On the other funds, I guess the slide prior that has all the numbers, that seems to be the category in 27 and 27 asterisk that is decreased.
Yep.
Can you just generally speak to what that is?
Yep, we're going to go through that right now.
Great. Thank you.
You got it.
Perfect.
All right. So what we're looking at here when we talk about our budget, a budget is comprised of revenues on one side of the ledger and expenditures on the other side of the ledger. This slide here and this page in your handout is the revenue side of the ledger. When we switch to the next slide or next page in your handout, you'll see the expenditure side of your ledger. What I'm highlighting for you right now with these numbers that are popping up on the screen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are the 5 funding categories that I just talked about, and that is a legend for you to see where they are in the forecast. So, Catherine, to answer your question, that whole group of other available funds next to item number 5, that is the collection of other funding sources. And one of the big things that you will see in the reduction is FY26 near the bottom. The town voted to use stabilization in order to fund an operating expense in the amount of $403,000. That was a one-time event for the FY26 budget, and it is not intended to be replicated for FY27, so that is a big part of that reduction that you're referring to. Make sense? Great. All right, so section number 1 is our tax. So we're going to dive into each one of these. Section number 1 is our tax levy, and it is comprised of 3 different components: the prior year levy, the automatic 2.5% increase, and then new growth. The second category is state aid, which is the amounts that we receive from the state to support our budget. Third category is local receipts. Fourth, up there is your debt exclusion. So your tax levy and your debt exclusion added together make up your property tax bill. All the other items below the maximum allowable levy, those do not appear on a tax bill. Those are revenue sources we get from some other mechanism. And over to the right is this set or notations of some of the assumptions that were used when building this revenue model, which we did go into in much detail when we met back in May and June. This is your expenditure side of the ledger, and so these are the assumptions that I was referring to a moment ago in order to project a high-level expectation of departmental expenses. If you look at that assumption column to the far right, A 3% increase was applied to general government, to public safety, et cetera. You can see those assumptions that are listed on the right-hand side. There are other amounts that are raised on our taxes that are not brought before, there's a few items that are not brought before town meeting based on the way the process works. One is our overlay. That accounts for all of the abatements. When people apply for abatements on their tax bill, that is the funding source that is used to cover those abatements. There are a wide variety of exemptions that are available to our seniors and to our veterans, and we take great pride in the level of effort that we do for outreach in order to make sure that all eligible residents are receiving the benefits of those exemptions. In some cases, a number of those exemptions are partially reimbursed by the state, but we have to declare it as an expenditure on our ledger in order to have the authorization to offer those programs. As well as our senior tax work-off program, we have about 35 folks in town who take advantage of providing a certain level of service across our organization, and in return, they receive credit on their tax bill to reduce their tax burden, and that's part of the senior tax work-off program. We also have cherry sheet assessments, which cherry sheet is also known as state aid. It's an old term in the vernacular of state aid. They used to call it cherry sheets because it was issued on a pink piece of paper when they were actually mailed out to us in the days before email. Cherry sheet offsets, that is the state aid for libraries. So the town receives about between $40,000 to $45,000 annually in order to support our public library systems. Listed below that are the items that are traditional, routine, and customary articles that we find on the town meeting warrant. And so all of those added together provides a snapshot of a projection for our expenditure ledger. And again, if we look at the bottom, those deficit amounts are placeholders. I fear that on Wednesday morning when I go to open up the Clipper, it's going to say that we have a $3-point-something million deficit, and that is just not the case. That will not be known until our expenditure budgets are in development. Okay? All right, so category number one, the tax levy. The tax levy is the revenue that we raise through our property taxes to fund our budget, and again, it funds 72.2% of our budget. Taxes are based on the value of land and structures, so buildings and other structures on that land. We assign a value to those building structures and land, and that is the basis for a tax bill. It is not the wealth of a community. I hear quite often that given the characteristics of Duxbury and the wealth levels that exist in this community, that it is surprising that we are facing an override and budget difficulties. But I want to make it clear that the wealth of a community is not translated into property taxes. We do not assess an income tax here, we assess a property tax. And that is strictly based on the value of land and structures in the community.
Just a point of clarification, though, the wealth of the community, just to double check, does affect the amount of state aid we get, doesn't it?
We will get to that, and it certainly does. However, it does not play a role in property taxes. Yes. So a tax levy can increase by 3 mechanisms only. An automatic 2.5% increase to the entire levy, as stated under State Law Proposition 2.5 that was passed in 1980. New growth, which we'll talk about in a minute, and either an override or a debt exclusion. Those are the only 3 mechanisms that can increase a tax levy. And so a tax levy is the sum total or the collection of all tax bills issued to the entire community. So if everybody in this community got a $1 tax bill, the sum total of that, $6,713, because we have 6,713 parcels. If those tax bills were added up together, that sum total is the levy. And so that levy can increase by 2.5% annually, and that's it, unless either of these other 2 conditions apply. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So we're in the middle of negotiations with a lot of our bargaining units, and one thing I hear time and time again is the house prices in the town of Duxbury and in a lot of other communities. The housing market has been obviously very hot, and there have been sales that have been extraordinary. And given the volume of sales that a community has and the prices that people are willing to pay for properties, that the town of Duxbury should be rolling in property taxes. And that is just not the case. The sale price or market appreciation for a home has no impact on generating new taxes. What it does is it redistributes the allocation of taxes across the community. But when a sale price goes up, so if you have a home that last year was valued at $1 million and this year you sold for $2 million, that does not generate a single penny in additional property taxes for the community. Does everybody understand that? Okay, great.
I think nobody wants to ask the question.
Go ahead.
No.
Oh.
Is there another way you can explain it for people maybe listening in? And is there another way you can maybe articulate that? Because it's still, I'm sure people kind of,
Sure.
what?
Sure.
Doesn't make sense.
If I could ask it in a different way.
Go ahead, Mike.
People say, well, my neighbor sold their house for $2 million and my tax bill went up.
Yep.
Could you explain why that is?
Sure. All right, we're going to go down a property valuation rabbit hole. You bet.
Although, before you
So-
get into that, I am scheduling a joint meeting with the assessors at some point so we can actually have this discussion.
Great.
Okay.
But go right ahead.
Sure. The relatively short answer is that sales influence the value of your property here in this community. So when sales happen, depending on where they happen in certain neighborhoods. And so your property is assigned to a neighborhood. We have a wide variety of neighborhoods here in the community. Your home is assigned to a neighborhood, and when sales happen in that neighborhood, it tells us that there is something desirable, assuming that the sale prices are high. It tells us that there's something about that neighborhood that needs to be adjusted because the property values that have potentially been on the books may not reflect market conditions and the desirability of those properties in that area. So those comps are used to influence the value of a person's home. So yes, if somebody sold their house they bought it for $1 million and sold it for $2 million, it can influence your property value, but it does not in any way generate any additional tax revenue for the community. What will happen is that as some values go up, believe it or not, in this community, there are values that do in fact go down. But it is just a redistribution of the levy based on your share of it from your property value. Does that answer it? Okay, great. Okay, so the tax levy. This is now we're starting to drill into the individual components. The tax levy itself, if we look at the FY27 column, it starts with the FY26 prior year's levy of $70,103,000. You'll see that's the starting point for FY27. An automatic 2.5% increase is applied to that levy limit, and that results in a $1.752 million increase in the tax levy. That is the limitation that we have under Prop 2.5. The next row is new growth. New growth is anything that now exists in your community that has never been on the tax rolls before. And what that means is any new construction, any new housing starts that have not been taxed before, this is where we capture it for the very first time when they come onto the tax rolls. That also includes any additions or renovations that you do to your property. So if you put in a pool and it didn't exist before, but it exists now, that is new growth. If you add an addition, put on a third story that didn't exist before and does now, that is new growth. But if your neighbor sells their home and it influences your value, that is not new growth. So new growth is anything new that has never seen the tax roll before, and for the first time that it's coming onto the books, it gets captured here and then will become in all future years blended into the entire tax levy. Okay? So that's when you look at the percent change, that is how the levy can increase more than 2.5%. And if you look at the FY27 column, you'll see that the sum total of those increases is 2.25 million, or 3.21% higher than last year. All right. And then debt exclusion, just want to draw your attention to the last line. So we have a set of financial policies that test for a number of different number of different variables. And it's also a framework that we use in order to govern our budget process as well as our day-to-day operations. One of those policies states that in general, when the community looks at their budget, they should be thoughtful and mindful of the amount of excluded debt that is approved for various projects, and that excluded debt should stay within 12% of the overall levy. So what I'm showing you here is that we are currently hovering at about 9% for the FY27 budget, about 9.5%. Okay, so new growth. New growth is one of those factors that helps to expand the levy, and this is what new growth looks like in the town of Duxbury. It is all over the place. So we have to come up with an estimate every year, and given the volatility or variability of new growth year over year, we take a conservative approach, and you'll see that in the forecast, we are projecting approximately $500,000 annually for the next couple of years in new growth, based on housing starts that are currently underway or permitted at this point, as well as a general assessment of traditional maintenance that people do. So every year we know that people in this community are making improvements to their homes, their existing homes. They're pulling permits for putting in new lights or adding decks or putting in pools. So we can see that. So based on new housing starts and the traditional amount of work that's generally done in this community, we come up with an estimate for new growth every year that's added to the tax levy. So that's category 1. Category 2, state aid. Our net state aid for FY27 is expected to be somewhere about $8.6 million. State aid is comprised of 2 components. The first component is the receipts or the revenue that we receive from the state, and the second component is the amount that the state takes back right away from us in the form of assessments. So the chart on the left-hand side is showing you our general trend of revenues to assessments and showing you our net state aid, which you can see is growing at a fairly steady, consistent pace, although not at a wide percentage. What you'll notice is in FY23, there was a jump. I'm looking at the left-hand chart. You can see in FY23 there was an increase, a pretty sizable increase in our state aid receipts that this community began to receive. And the chart on the right sort of illustrates that by looking at a trend line and separating the revenues from the assessments. You can see that the assessments are much more volatile than the receipts are. But what happened in FY23 is that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts passed some legislation called the Student Opportunity Act, and they actually intended or expected to begin implementing that in FY22. And what that did is it recalibrated Chapter 70 aid to all Massachusetts communities, all 351 communities, and provided additional funding. Now that sounds great, but at the same time, they also modified the calculation of the foundation budget and net minimum contributions and a number of other variables that are used to determine the requirement for school spending. And so what the state was trying to do was to say, yeah, we're going to expect that you contribute more at the local level, but we're going to offset that with some additional state aid. What happened is they did not start to implement that program in FY22. They delayed it a year, and they implemented it in FY23. And at that time, they implemented the first 2 years together. So it's a 6-year phase-in period. So it will go from FY23 to FY27 with some increases to our state aid. And then that phase-in, that program will be fully phased in. And therefore, we expect that we will be returning to our normal incremental increases for state aid. The volatility that we're seeing here in assessments, that top line on the right-hand chart, the volatility is really driven by charter school assessments. So all of the other assessments or programs that we pay for, things like mosquito control and the GATRA bus and supporting Plymouth County's operations, those are relatively consistent. The volatility really comes from charter school tuitions when we have students leave the district and go to a charter school. So if we drill into the state aid numbers themselves, I've highlighted here that 6-year implementation phase-in period for the Student Opportunity Act, SOA. And you will see that when it comes to state aid, 82% of it is Chapter 70 aid, which is education aid. It is aid that is directly used to offset the cost of providing public education here in the community. 12% of our state aid is UGA, unrestricted general government aid. It is basically the small little sliver that is supposed to be used for all town operations. And then the other 6% is varied and sundry smaller amounts. But what you'll see from a revenue forecasting perspective is the chart that I have on the left-hand side where I've highlighted FY23 to FY27, if you look at the percent change, they're much larger. So that 15.6% increase in FY23, that is the result of the 2-year phase-in for the SOA. And so we would expect to see a spike there. The next 4 years, we are also anticipating spikes in, larger than normal annual increases. But once that implementation has been fully phased in and that new baseline has been established, the Commonwealth it is unlikely that the Commonwealth will be providing more generous benefits than they did in the past. So the projection variable that we're using is a modest 2.3%. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, fun fact about state aid, if you didn't know this already. So in the current budget, the FY26 budget that was issued in July, $6.429 billion was allocated to Chapter 70 aid. So the Commonwealth is distributing $6.4 billion to 288 eligible communities who have school districts. Of that $6.4 billion, 25 towns in the Commonwealth consume 2/3 of that state aid. Those 25 towns are listed to the right-hand side, which means that all other 263 towns split 1/3 of the state aid pie. So
Is that based on numbers alone, just how many students are in those particular towns? What is
that is
the
based
basis
on
for that?
that's a rabbit hole we're not going to go down today because that's a whole weekend workshop. But the Chapter 70 formula has a wide number of variables that are utilized. And some of them, and we're going to talk about some of them when we talk about local receipts and the municipal revenue growth factor. But it's based on the town's ability to pay as viewed by the Commonwealth, and your ability to pay is based on 3 characteristics. Number 1, property wealth. Number 2, income wealth.
Yeah, your wealth tax.
And number 3, the municipal revenue growth factor. Those 3 variables are used to evaluate every community and determine their ability to pay and therefore how much state aid they will receive based on the Chapter 70 formula. That's in a nutshell.
And that will apply to the 33.6% as well, right?
I'm sorry?
The third,
Yep.
we get ranked with the other,
Absolutely.
263 towns, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions on state aid? Local receipts. Local receipts are revenues that are derived here at the community level based on a set of choices that have been made for programs that exist in the community. While we have control over setting many of the rates, we do not have control over setting all of the rates. For example, the largest local receipt that this community and most communities generate is motor excise. So all motor excise bills that you receive at the beginning of the year, those are called, they are comprised of our local receipts category. Those are not property taxes, those are excise taxes. That tax rate of $25 per thousand is set by the state. We have no control over that. So there are some things that we do set via fee hearings and other things that we do not. The framework for local receipts. There's a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. Number one, you cannot estimate more than a prior year's actual. So when we go to set the tax rate and we build our budget and we're coming up with these estimates for local receipts, first and foremost, you cannot estimate your next year's budget at a level higher than the previous year unless you've held a fee hearing and have set a new fee structure that will be in place for more than half the year in order to see the results of that increased revenue stream. Secondly, DLS, which is the Division of Local Services, it's the regulatory agency that governs municipal finance. Their recommendation has long been to only estimate up to 85% of prior year actuals when you're building your revenue budget. They do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, you do not want to ever face a revenue deficit. If you don't meet your revenue targets, you have a revenue deficit, and there are repercussions or consequences related to that. Number two, a lot of these, when we look at them, you'll see a lot of these categories can be unpredictable or variable, and you need to make sure that you're building sustainable estimates when putting together your revenue forecast. So they recommend only going up to 85%. I will tell you that we use a wide variety of variables across all of the various categories because each one of them is analyzed individually. Some of those categories are at higher than 85% and some are not. And it's based on the nature of that revenue source itself. Estimating higher than 85% reduces the amount of free cash that a community will generate. Free cash is used to support our capital infrastructure. It is our primary financing mechanism for all of the capital requests that our departments put together. And so if there is not sufficient free cash, then there are going to be a number of capital items that are going to have to be foregone, delayed, or postponed in some manner. So the more aggressive that we estimate our local receipts, the higher the impact that it has on our ability to generate free cash. And when you're looking at local receipts and trying to make decisions about your budget, we also need to be mindful of the question, what services should our residents be receiving within their property tax bill versus services that we should be charging an additional fee for? We could charge fees for lots of different things, but does it actually make sense? Are we providing the right level of service and making the right decisions for our community based on fees that we charge? So with that being said, this is the local receipts forecast. There are 23 categories that are set by the state, that Division of Local Services agency, and we budget or estimate our receipts based on these categories. The ones highlighted in green on the left-hand side, those items, let me see, I think I have here we go. Those items that are highlighted in green affect what is called the municipal revenue growth factor. And so what that means is the municipal revenue growth factor is one of the variables that is used in calculating Chapter 70 education aid. If your community has a high municipal revenue growth factor, then you receive or you rank less favorably on the state aid calculation. Because what that means is if you are able to generate additional revenue here in these local receipt categories by whatever influence and factors you have at the community level, that reduces your need for state aid. in the eyes of the state. So as we start to do well in any of these categories that are highlighted in green, just know that there's a consequence on the other side of that equation. Okay? So this chart right here is the one that tends to change more frequently because these are the items that we can control, even though it only represents about 9.5% of our budget. I'm going to draw your attention to a couple of items here that have changed since the forecast was presented in May when we started to talk with the Select Board. So first and foremost, I have increased our projections for sewer. Sewer is not an enterprise fund. Sewer is a local receipt. It's not an enterprise fund because it cannot be self-supporting. However, we do charge sewer rates, and we know that we recently had a sewer rate increase. And therefore, revenues associated with sewer services have been factored into this projection, and that number has been increased. I have also included some increases in 2 different categories for which we have not yet had a fee hearing, but it will be forthcoming. And that is line number 8, charges for services for solid waste. That is the transfer station primarily. And we are setting up a fee hearing schedule for October, I believe. Nancy, is that somewhere?
That's October 20th, I think it is.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I think that'll be the night that we're going to do a budget update too. So we'll be doing a fee hearing to talk about transfer station stickers and the fact that the current sticker price is not supporting the cost of that operation. So I have included in this forecast an increase with the assumption that that fee increase will pass. Okay? The other fee increase that we're going to talk about on October 20th is beach stickers. We have not had an increase in beach stickers or parking fees for quite some time, and we are going to be talking about those on October 20th as well. And as a result, you'll see that we have had predictions or projections for beach revenue. It had been declining year over year, and we were anticipating that that was continuing to erode. What you'll see is that this incorporating a projected fee increase is stemming the tide of that decline, if you will. The other item is building permits. So building permits is very difficult to estimate. As you saw, the volatility in new growth. So you have to pull a building permit before you can do a project here. Once we know that you pulled a permit, we know that we're going to go out there and look at it and capture that new growth. And you saw the volatility there. We cannot, when it comes to building permits, estimate too aggressively on building permits because once you establish a revenue source and you think that you are going to generate $1 million in building permits and therefore we build that capacity into our budget and we hire new staff members to join our team, the minute that that goes down and we start to get into a housing crunch and the construction market cools off, that revenue source is gone. And if you don't have the revenue to support your budget, we would then be facing laying off those folks. So what we need to do when we put together our revenue budgets is make sure that we are estimating at a level that is sustainable. Okay? And the last category that I want to address is investment income. So, actually, do I have?
Actually, cemetery's gone up as well.
Cemetery has gone up, and so this is always a tough one for me to talk about because it's a really bad thing that their revenues are increasing, right, for the services that they provide. However, you have seen Chip come before you several times aggressively managing his rates, and so that is a direct consequence or result of those rates. But the volume of business that he has done in the past year has been much higher than it had been in previous years. Okay. And I don't know whether that's going to be, whether that will sustain itself. Okay. So let's talk about a couple. So we've talked about a few of these, but what I wanted to show you is when you drop this data into some charts and you start to look historically at some of these categories of local receipts.
Sorry, Mary, before you continue, you were going to mention investment income.
Yeah, I'm going to do it right here.
Okay.
That's why I flipped to this one here.
Right.
So when you drop the data into some graphs, and I talk about sustainability, predictability, when we're building a budget, it needs to be consistent and reliable year over year. When we look at some of these revenue sources, you can see directly the volatility in a lot of these, that the building permit number, motor excise number, beach number that we just talked about. So when we look at estimating this, we sort of have to figure out what is our sweet spot that we know is going to be sustainable. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, earnings on investments, you will see a very, very steep spike over the last couple of years when the market has been up. And so we know that interest rates are up. We know that the market has been very strong, and we have seen really positive results in some of our investments. Now, bear in mind, we're not investing in the stock market. We are a municipality. There are a lot of guardrails over how we are able to manage our money. We have what is called the prudent investor rule, and we are restricted to a certain set of about 35 investment vehicles that we're allowed to utilize. Used to be about a set of 12, and the Commonwealth a few years ago expanded that to about 35. When we invest our money, we are investing in low to moderately low risk vehicles. But over this past couple of years, given the market conditions, we've seen a pretty significant or strong performance in our earnings on investment. However, there's an awful lot of volatility in the world today, and there are an awful lot of influences that can affect our continued earnings on investment, and therefore that category is always budgeted very, very conservatively. And so I just wanted to point out the volatility in some of these categories that we have to analyze as we put together these estimates.
Mary, when you
Yes,
look
sir.
at that investment income, right, fiscal year 24, 1.6 million, fiscal year 25, 1.7. We're now forecasting for this year, fiscal year, only 205,000. Where does that, is that number, I know it has to be conservative, but are you getting outside support from our for the banks that are doing investment to kind of support that number, or how is that number calculated or derived?
From your finance team.
Does that assume a change in the principal?
I'm sorry?
Does that assume a change in the principal invested? So in
Well,
other words,
so-
for example, we've got big ticket projects that we're financing.
Mm-hmm.
We have money coming, a lot of money coming in temporarily, then money going out. It necessarily has to go out, or there are penalties. But
Yeah.
is any of that tied into this? Because I'm
Absolutely.
with Fernando that, $1.4 million drop in a year.
Yeah.
There's got to be something more than just being conservative.
That is, so we've got very large ticket projects that are happening, and our monthly run rate, so from a cash flow perspective, we need to make sure that we have a significant amount of our portfolio liquid in order to meet payroll and to meet our payables on a given monthly cycle. But yes, that takes into account cash flow needs as well as level of risk that we're allowed to take. And it factors in economic conditions that we're seeing in the market that may impact our investments.
Do we see the investment income on a monthly basis?
We do.
We do. How's it trending right now? I know it's only...
So why don't we look at that at our next meeting?
Yeah,
Because
let's do
we're not diving into details here.
No, I understand, but...
This
okay,
is a
maybe-
forecast, yeah.
Maybe this is let's talk about it again, please, yeah?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, that's category 3, local receipts. Category 4 is our exempt debt service, and so these are voter-approved projects that are allowing the community to generate revenue to cover the cost of debt service for these specific projects for a finite period of time. So if you look at this chart, these are the outstanding obligations of the general fund, and the column in the middle indicates whether it's exempt or non-exempt. And all of those items that are non-exempt, all of the items that are exempt, the annual debt service is shown on that row of our forecast called debt exclusion. The far right column answers the number one question that I get all the time is, when are these things going to be paid off? And the number one question is, when is the high school, middle school going to be paid off? If you look at the bottom of that chart, you'll see in the far right column, FY38 is when that debt service will roll off. Okay? Here graphically is what our debt exclusions look like. And so again, these are for the life of the project. So as the projects get completed, as the debt service is paid off or matured, the debt itself drops off and should result in a reduction in your tax bill when those projects mature. Right now, we have, you're seeing the spike in 27, from 26 to 27, and that is because of the two new projects that are currently underway, DPW and Seawall. But you will see that in about 20 years or so, about 20 years, 15 years or so, our debt exclusions should drop off significantly.
The current ones.
The current ones.
Right.
So,
Right, because as things roll off, other things roll on.
And I was going to put a couple of pictures up here of some of the big ticket items that we are facing. Not the least of which is, the Alden School. There's been an active conversation. Yep. A not so fun conversation is the McNeil dump and potentially capping a very expensive project to cap that McNeil dump. The engineering of that is currently underway to determine the scope and the cost estimate of that project. We have projects that are outside of debt exclusion related to PFAS that are, need to be factored into our conversations about capital. So there's no end of infrastructure investment that we're facing. And finally, the last category of other available funds. So these are funds that the town has on hand. That is the June 30, 2025 unaudited balance of those funds. Those funds are restricted in nature. So they're called special revenue funds for a reason, and that is because they are intended to address a special purpose. They cannot be used in general to fund the general fund operating budget. They have to be used to fund a purpose that is restricted in its intent of why we created those funds in the first place. So from those funds, Catherine, to answer your question, that 1.2%, that's where they're coming from. Okay. All right, so those are our 5 categories of our funding sources. Those are the estimates that were used in order to put together the forecast. So the next steps in our process is that the departments will be completing their budget requests in ClearGov. They will begin to have meetings with the town manager and myself to refine those requests. We will provide an update to the select board, and I tentatively put in here October 20th. It sounds like that was a good date.
It's my birthday, the 21st, so yes.
There you go.
A nice present.
And
Be a nice present, thank you.
all right, and then just a reminder that the Finance Committee budget hearings, that calendar that I showed you is available on the website.
Mary, I hate to I just want to double check the previous page, other available funds.
Yes.
I noticed there's maybe, can you explain maybe the PFAS settlement fund? So this is I like this one, I think. Tell me about this one.
Sure, so that's a new one that just came in a couple of weeks ago. So the town has signed on to a class action lawsuit.
Yep.
And that is the first payment that we have received as part of the settlement proceeds for this particular class action lawsuit.
Good. All right, well, it's small.
It's a very
amount,
small.
but it's something, right?
It's parked in an investment right now in order to grow until we can use it.
Right.
Are those funds going to be restricted to utilizing something water-related? Or
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep,
There's going to be restrictions on those?
Yep.
Yes. Yes, and those restrictions have already been promulgated from DLS. They've already issued legal guidance for us on those. All right. With that being said, any questions?
Questions from the select board?
Okay, very
A lot to
thorough.
digest.
Very thorough, and I'm looking forward to some more conversation, especially as we mentioned with regards to investment. That's a big one, right? In terms of our that budget item.
I appreciate the structure
Yep.
that's been built into this. We know that fiscal 27 is going to be a particularly difficult year, and we've got, I think, very reasonable and achievable steps for us to have a discussion step by step as we go through the process and make some difficult decisions.
Very good.
The other boards.
Just, I guess, logistical, back to the very first slide, which I think was the calendar. Our town meeting in Duxbury is maybe the first one in the state.
It is the first one in the Commonwealth.
Can you remind me if there has been discussion about potentially looking to push that date out? I feel like there has, but it would be helpful just in this forum to get us all on the same page with that.
There has.
Thank you. There has been, and this is my favorite
ahead.
subject.
Good.
You made his night.
10 years. It was a citizen's.
I hit a button.
It was a citizen petition that I, yes, put forward, and it was roundly rejected. But I suspect, with the support of the school committee, and other members of the town department, we may stand a better chance in coming March
It's a real,
to.
speaking for, I think, the school committee, it is
Oh,
a
yeah.
real challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
the
Couldn't agree more. So
Okay.
that will give us more time and more information as to, basically what the revenue sources are, and we'll be able to sharpen our calculations on our estimates and forecasts.
Well,
So,
I'm happy to speak about that with you.
yes,
Okay.
we look forward to a joint conversation on the subject
Good.
and
It
support.
may be a warrant article
I would be
for this town
grateful
meeting.
if it passed.
Oh, yeah.
This time of year is very challenging to
Yep.
put all of this together.
Okay.
So,
Thank
thank you.
I have a question. You, in this, you show forecasting going out for quite a few years. What do you do for, the only thing I see we have any potential revenue income improvement is commercial real estate. And we're not, is there somebody looking at that as a way of, trying to change the tax base in the town so it's not so heavily on the residential? Is there a committee, that's what I'm asking, is there a committee that's doing?
There is. Yep.
I know the town votes on all this stuff,
They
and
do.
that's what it
Yep.
gets down to.
In fact, if we were to do something like that, that would require changes to the zoning bylaw, and those would be
Right, exactly.
prompted by the planning board, and if they decided they wanted to change zoning districts from, say, residential to commercial, that would be up to them to decide, and then present it to the voters for their consideration through an article.
But it was included in Envision Duxbury in the last master plan that we did, wasn't it? Wasn't that
To
part of that?
increase the commercial districts?
I thought I had read that
I
it
believe
was
that
one of
there's
the-
very little appetite in
Yeah.
town to do that.
Well, that wasn't my question. My question was,
But
was it
in-
part of the last master plan?
Envision
that we had?
Duxbury is based on the desires of the community.
That's-
That's where it all comes from. There's a survey that goes out, and then the strategies and the priorities and bylaws get adopted from that. But there has been no overwhelming desire by the residents historically to increase the commercial districts.
That's a good question, Matt.
Not a ballot box, Matt, to Amy's point. Any rezoning, even though we've talked about it, we've had a lot of discussions through the MBTA Act and a number of other opportunities, right? There doesn't seem to be a great appetite to change the tenor of the community, being more residential and rural in nature, with our very strict zoning at present that excludes a lot of commercial and business opportunities.
To answer your question, Matt, I don't recall there's a specific provision in Envision Duxbury about expanding the tax base commercially, but to Kathleen's point, it was a big topic of discussion during the MBTA communities process. One thing I've heard just anecdotally is folks who have advocated for more commercial property in Duxbury, and I understand the argument. There has been an argument to say, well, does Pembroke or particularly Hanover have enough commercial? And the question there is not that you necessarily want to go to Hanover to shop, but they also had override issues, even with all the commercial that they had. So I think the argument being, you get more commercial, but does that solve your tax base problem?
Right.
Yeah. That's what I've heard was the pushback, right? So
Yeah.
towns with big commercial also facing the same budget challenges. So I don't think that's the root cause of the problem to go commercial. I think it's 2.5.
It's 2.5.
It's 2.5.
It's a much larger discussion,
Yeah.
and it's statewide.
Yeah.
And we're not the only state that's,
Yeah.
right, facing these kinds of legislation.
Especially in the age where inflation 3.5%, 4%, right? And so there's a fundamental disconnect
Right,
between
and
the
this
two
was
numbers.
passed in the 80s,
Right.
as Mary pointed out.
Yeah.
So much different economic environment from the 80s than to our present state. So,
It's a big conversation.
yeah.
Fundamentally, there's a big problem geographically. We're on the right coast and not the left coast.
It's true.
And what do I mean by that? If we had a campus that was attractive to a high-tech company, then we would see perhaps a change in the attitude in the community. When we're talking about commercial now, most of it tends to be retail, wholesale, warehousing and that type of thing. Very little manufacturing, and there's not a lot of opportunity for high-tech manufacturing. So we're constrained by the fact that we're right coast versus left coast. I mean, the problems that planning staffs have in Central California are far different than ours.
Sure. Jen, I think you had a comment.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, so I think you mentioned that in late October, there was going to be a fee hearing. I think the zoning topic is a third rail. You mentioned some proceeds from a class action settlement, but like, what are the, outside of the zoning, the fees, these, whatever this class action settlement monies are there other discussions, efforts around other ways to raise money? I know that sounds like a simple question. I know it's complicated, but I just don't. I don't know. I don't feel I understand that there's like a strategy other than what we've discussed.
So, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, generally speaking, the town has been very limited in its appetite to introduce abilities to generate new revenues. So we've talked about, we had the Sustainable Budget Task Force who had a series of conversations. We've had an entire year's worth of budget discussions. We've had several discussions with the Select Board about ideas such as, parking kiosks or, solar array revenue and, different types of things. There has been very limited appetite, or I should say no appetite to really pursue a number of these programs. So the revenues that we're talking about right now are limited to the existing fee structures that we have and making sure that we are reviewing those schedules and making appropriate and timely modifications. There have been a lot of them that have not been looked at in over a decade, and so what we're trying to do is trying to clean that up and put some eyes on them. But the ability to sort of generate any other additional meaningful revenue, whether it's commercial, increasing a commercial tax base or doing some other things, that requires planning and it requires zoning and it requires, a more thoughtful efforts that would come from the planning board, from the town planner, as well as the select board to set those strategies. So right now, the revenue generation has been fairly limited.
And ultimately, it's at the voting box,
Yeah.
box, right? So.
And then,
And I'm referring to all sort of non-override related revenues.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the state aid front, I mean, I'm aware of discussions around Chapter 70 and Foundation and some of there's efforts to kind of influence legislators on that front. But is there anything relevant state aid wise that our representatives can help with?
No,
Or-
because it's based on a formula, right? So because 82.2% of our aid is Chapter 70 aid, and it's all based on empirical data. It's a formula. So there's no influence whatsoever. Everybody is blind in that calculation, and the result is what it is. So no, there's no influence related to that. There has been long-standing conversations about ed reform and reviewing the Chapter 70 formula.
Yeah.
And there have been fits and starts at with the state delegation to make that happen. They've done some moderate changes, but until there's real, major ed reform for the Chapter 70 calculation, I don't think we're going to see anything in the near future. There is a piece of legislation that has been up in front of Beacon Hill for about 2 years now, which is called the Municipal Empowerment Act. And in that piece of legislation, there are various opportunities for communities to potentially expand their ability to generate some revenues. For example, right now, municipalities who have adopted the meals excise tax, so the meals excise tax rate, which is set by the state, is 0.75 or 0.75%. The Municipal Empowerment Act will allow communities to increase that rate up to, it's either 1 or 1.5%. So it's a new additional fee, if you will. There's also language in that piece of legislation about motor excise and allowing communities to adopt a surcharge on motor excise. So there's a couple of things that the state is including in there to give the communities expanded powers to assess additional fees. Thank you.
And I think Powerball's not on the approved list, right? One thing I just wanted to add, and you raised a very good point about revenues, but one thing that we as municipal folks, I think, have more direct control over is efficiencies and cost control. And that's one thing that I know that Rainey and his team are always looking at. Can we do things, can we provide at least the same level of service at a lower cost or some more efficient way? So one example of that we all, I think, can appreciate is the Rock, and how a multi-community service can provide us in town with a terrific product lowercase p, where we can have some good revenue out of it, but we're not blowing the bank. Another example is the veteran service agent that Rainey's working on right now, where we're sharing with Kingston, or we will be sharing with Kingston. So that's not to say that we need to regionalize everything, but where it makes sense and we can maybe save a couple of bucks if we can get the intermunicipal agreement done with Kingston, that's going to be a terrific thing for Duxbury, because essentially we're going to be getting back the same person who left, who's known statewide as being a rock star in veteran services. So I'll be happy to see that happen. So from this chair anyway, or from the select board perspective, yes, we're definitely looking at revenue wherever we can get it, but knowing the realities of how tough that is, as we're all agonizing now, I think we're spending a lot more time looking at, can we do things more efficiently?
Yeah.
Well, I know we're not supposed to quote these expenditure budgets, these deficit amounts through 2030, but they do look fairly concerning, to say the least. If you look at 28, 29, and 30, you're going from
They are representative
negative
of what,
324 to negative 1.1 to negative 2.5 to negative 3.9 million.
It's an illustration to show you what the expectation
So
is
that's a
going
lot of
to look
efficiencies.
like. Potentially. All right. Brian, if I might. Oh.
No? So you're jumping in there to say something.
My bedtime.
Oh, you have time.
To roll into that revenue transfer.
Can I just show one last thing? Corey reminded me, I said ClearGov.
Yeah, you want to show us ClearGov?
Yeah, I do.
Yep.
Real quick.
Sorry to keep you up there, I'm sorry.
And Cindy, if you have anything, please jump in.
Okay. So what I just
I'll
wanted.
look for that.
I'm
No,
sorry.
I just said I'll do that, no problem.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that, Cindy. Okay, so I wanted to just give you guys a preview of what's to come. So this is the ClearGov tool that we utilize for our budgeting process. And for the FY27 budget, we are implementing for the first time a component of this module called the Digital Budget Book. And we have been behind the scenes hard at work with, the finance department has been hard at work with our department heads who are building data into this digital budget book, and I'm showing you a preview of what is going to be available on the town's website in order for everyone to have one source of information to go to when looking for budget data or questions about various departments. So for example, if we drill into the department summaries, you can see that our police department and our fire department have been hard at work putting information together for the community to illustrate exactly what those departments provide for services, what their staffing levels look like, as well as key performance indicators or services that they provide, so that folks will have a place to go. We're not trying to find slide decks or who said what or where do we get questions answered. The community will have access to a digital budget book My expectation is that we are going to roll this out at the time that the town manager is presenting his balanced budget to the community, so that you'll have one place to go to hopefully answer your questions. So I just wanted to give you a preview of coming attractions.
Oh, that's terrific.
I have a question, Mary. As far as numbers go, when each department builds their budget, is there a system that basically says, beep, you've gone over the revenue projection? And just, you know what I mean? Like, okay.
That beep has already started.
Right, okay.
That is a steady,
So anything
steady
over
sound.
3% is going to be like, override, or no?
No, not necessarily, because what I expect to happen is that we are going to, based on our revenue constraints that we have been talking about for a couple of years, we know that the cost of doing business exceeds our available revenues.
Right.
And as a result, we suffered, some pretty severe reductions in force in our last budget. And, I can speak for myself, I'm feeling it dramatically. It's had an incredibly adverse impact on my department. I know it's had the same on Rainey's department. So we know that our revenues are not able to sustain our operations. We have not given departments an edict that says cut 10% across the board, because it doesn't always make sense to approach the budget that way, right? We need to look at it holistically and make a determination on what services we want to pull back on. And that may be, operational hours of a certain department may get scaled back instead of just a 10% cut in pens and paper. And so we're going to have to holistically look at the organization and make those decisions on what we value and I shouldn't say what we value. We value everything. We value all of the services that we're providing. But we need to prioritize and make sure that the services that we are going to provide in a balanced budget match the priorities that we are establishing for the community. And there's going to be some sacrifices and consequences.
Sure. And just to reiterate, the select board priorities are fire department, police department, and DPW.
No, fixed costs. So, nope, it has to start. A town is legally obligated to pay for their debt service.
Right.
All payroll taxes, pension assessments, Medicare payroll withholdings. There are a number of items that a community has to build into their budget first and foremost.
Yes.
Before you even get to various departments.
Priorities. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I have.
Thank you.
Do you want me to go ahead and read it out?
Well, maybe it would help if I did it just so I can see if I get you right.
Yeah.
So, fund all fixed and mandatory costs.
Yep.
Preserve public safety staffing, inclusive of the positions in fire and police that were reestablished from the stabilization fund. Level services for school at a cap of 3%.
Yep.
Balanced 5A budget. Develop a 5B override budget.
Yeah.
That's what I have for the top 5 from my notes.
This is a memo dated August 5th.
Oh, I can do it from the website.
And so while you're looking at that, the only other thing that I wanted to bring up as I look at the budget timeline, and it says that in September, October, town manager meets with department heads to refine budget requests based on revenue forecasts. October, December, finance committee recommendations. December 10th, school committee budget hearing. So you know that the school committee goes through a sort of an exhaustive exercise of budget probing and deliberation from essentially end of October through to December. So if priority 3 is the sort of level services to schools at a 3% cap, should we just assume that you're making a 5A placeholder for 3% for the schools while we go through the process of making our formal request to the town?
That's what I will be doing, yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Other
all set.
questions?
I guess I would just question that a little bit because out of all the departments, the education department seems to have the only percentage tied to it in this statement of your priorities. So I would ask for consideration that just like funding police, fire, highway with the appropriate department staff required costs, that the schools be permitted to do the same and not cap it. It may be 3%, it may be 2%, but it just seems inconsistent, I guess.
So
Well, I think you've got assumptions that range from 3% just to 3.5%, right?
Yep,
So
absolutely.
you've got assumptions for every department.
Correct.
But the assumption doesn't affect what our formal ask is to the town.
No, it does not. The school committee is going to go, it's the superintendent and the director of business and finance are going to put together a recommended budget to present to the school committee, and you're going to go through your normal course of action of reviewing it, having your public budget hearing, and you're going to vote a recommended budget for the school department. We are then going to determine how much of that we can afford. And the 3% was assigned to the school department as a placeholder, given the scale and magnitude of the school department's budget. You know, the school department's budget is half of the town's budget. And when we look at putting this together, you have to sort of manage the parts. And when one of your parts is the biggest part, we need to sort of make sure that we're all under the understanding that there needs to be some level of conservatism when we put these budgets together in order to meet within our revenue, our available funding sources.
And the only hypothetical I would ask about is, and maybe Dr. Klingeman and Lisa, you can chime in, but I mean, the school, just like other departments, but maybe even more so, the schools have a lot of compulsory mandatory services that are assigned to us by the state. I'm not even sure if 3% covers that. So 3% could very well not mean level services. 3% could mean very less than level services, because our first charter is to cover all of our legally statutory mandated costs. So just so the public knows, and obviously the select board knows, and the finance committee knows.
Doesn't change year over year, Matt. I mean, that's what you have to consider, right, when you're building your budget.
Right. I'm just when I look through the priorities, I just want to make sure that everyone is able to sort of reconcile the narrative. Level services for the schools at a 3% cap. Those things may not be reconcilable. We just don't know that yet.
Right, and you'll come back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understood.
All right. Other questions or comments on this topic? Great discussion. Thank you all. Thank you, Mary, for an excellent presentation and lots of work in the back end. So we appreciate that. All right.
Thank you.
What's that?
Mary?
It's not a public hearing.
Yeah.
Mary?
Yeah.
We needed to do a vote for the transfer.
Yep, I'm going to
How
work
did
with
you-
the committee next. Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Before the select board moves on to the next item, are there any comments from the public? It's not a public hearing per se, but we're always happy to hear from folks who attend. Yeah, please come on up and introduce yourself for our record.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Madden. I am the president of the Teachers Union. I just want to kind of stress, listening to all of this, it's really very discouraging for the largest group of teachers, right, the largest group of people in this town to sit and listen to the fact that it feels, and I'm not saying that that's what it is, but right now, the way that this sounds is it feels like this is not a priority. And I think what Matt was trying to bring up is that we sit and we work with your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors, your nieces, your nephews, whomever it is, every single day. And we took a tremendous hit in our school department last year. I was the president of the union last year as well, and I sat with every single one of the teachers that was let go. Very lucky that there are people in the town that recognize the need for first responders and put forward a motion at the special town meeting to reinstate those positions. Our positions were not reinstated. And what this is looking like is not only are these not going to be reinstated, but where all the other departments or Several of the other departments are looking to prioritize maintaining their staffing, which I don't disagree with. I completely understand the need for that. We're looking at the potential to take another hit. There is very few places where we can look at that. And I would encourage you to start talking to students, particularly students at the middle and high school level, who have class choice, and ask them what their experiences were this year compared to previous years. Because this year we had students who weren't able to take the classes that they wanted to take, who for the first time in the 20 plus years that I've been here didn't get their first choice in classes because of the cuts that we had. That is going to get worse. So we can't continue to promote this idea of wanting to have excellence in education and excellence in first responders and every other department in this town, and also cut staffing that allows us to offer all of these things to our students. So I think to the point that Matt was trying to make, beyond the compulsory things that we also need to do, all of those monies impact what we are able to offer our students in terms of having a really true, robust education with a lot of student voice and choice. So the more we cut, the more that's taken away. And I just want to make sure that that's abundantly clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? Do we have anyone online, Nancy? Okay. Great, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So next on the select board's agenda, and the other boards are welcome to stick around. I don't want to handcuff anybody.
We have to vote on a revenue transfer.
Okay.
Want
Want to go ahead and do that? Yeah.
I think so.
All right, I'm going to call us adjourned. Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's way past my bedtime.
Thanks for joining with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You guys mind if I stay, or you're going to kick me
Please.
out?
Oh, of course. Go right ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, please.
Okay, so we're asking for just over $10,000 as a reserve fund transfer. It'll be the first transfer for FY '26. There's $150,000 in the reserve fund. It is under the control of the Finance Committee, and we're asking to utilize just over $10,000 in order to address an OSHA violation. So on the top of our sewer treatment plant, we have HVAC equipment, and we do not have safety guardrails installed on the rooftop. So when people are up on the roof repairing that equipment, there is a risk for a fall without the safety guardrails. This reserve fund transfer would allow us to purchase and install those guardrails that are necessary on the top of that facility. Any questions?
Thank you, no.
Okay.
One or the other. Are there any questions of the Finance Committee members regarding this request?
No, there are no questions from Kathleen.
Anybody else? Then I
Nope.
would, did I hear something?
Betsy?
What was that?
No, I just said no, no question.
Oh,
Congratulations on the birth.
Number 13.
Thank
I
you.
will then entertain a motion to approve the motion to move $10,732 from our reserve fund to the Building and Ground Maintenance Services account.
So moved. Second.
Any further questions? Not appearing, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Roll call, because I'm on audio. Sorry, guys.
Because Betsy's out.
Roll call. Betsy?
Aye.
Kathleen?
Aye.
Chuck, aye.
J.R.I. Al, aye.
Mark, aye.
Friend, aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ashley.
Move to adjourn?
Yep.
Second? Chair?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you.
JR,
Thank you all.
sleep well.
JR, get some extra winks for me, would you?
I was gonna say, you probably had to stop before this thing. Yeah,
All right, so continuing with the select board, our next item is a discussion pertaining to the letter to Mass Housing regarding villas at Keenbrook, proposed 40B. This is continued from August 11th and 25th. And I want to thank Amy for all your hard work in drafting this thing.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome, and, yep, Randy took my notes and threw it together.
Thanks, Amy.
Looks good.
We had some fun.
It was quite an exercise.
Got each other ramped up.
Do you want me to read the letter into the record or not? Not necessarily.
Let's do one, yeah.
Okay.
It's 5 pages, but the public should know that the select board did
Yes.
take a good look at the comprehensive permit that it was applied for. We get one ability to respond to mass housing, and we did flag a lot of issues and areas of concern.
Yep.
And so the public should know that, we don't take these lightly. We did our homework, and that the letter is available. I'm sure maybe Susanna will get a copy of it so she can put something in the clipper, but it is available for members of the public to see.
Yeah, I do have a question, and just more of an update. I raised a concern about the Secretary of State issue that you had noted in the first draft. Has there been an update about this investigation, about whether this is a legitimate company in Massachusetts?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
It's taken care of in this. Do you need a copy?
There was,
I have it right here, I just didn't know.
comment 1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a legit company.
Legit company.
Tag Carpenter was actually watching the meeting, and he said it was the error that made it in Alabama instead of Massachusetts was because of somebody fat fingering it and using the drop-down menu, and Alabama was the first state that came up instead of Massachusetts.
Oh,
And then Nancy, I think you looked it up for me and found that they were a bona fide Massachusetts outfit. So we explored that and corrected it.
Okay.
So it's the quality of it's a reflection of the quality of the application by the applicant,
yeah, that's a good point.
right? Where we can't even be bothered to put it down there, right? So if the applicant's trying to convince people that this is a good thing, you'd think they'd take more time to present a put-together quality
Well,
document.
and to that point,
Yeah.
without getting down into the weeds of this, but
Yeah.
the application is supposed to be certified.
Right.
And it needs to be notarized. It's supposed to be signed under the pains and penalties of perjury, and that signature line is empty.
Yeah.
So we are literally reviewing something that we have no one is attesting to,
Correct.
which is
Yep.
concerning.
Any suggestions for any further modifications to this letter?
Clarify that for the public.
No, it's great.
Okay. Cindy, any comments to the letter?
No, not at all. I really, thanks, Amy.
You're
All right.
welcome.
And Rainey, putting it together.
Keeps it up rainy.
And Rainey too. I move that the select board approves the letter to Mass Housing and authorizes the select board chair to sign on our behalf.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote, roll call, starting with Cindy, please.
Cindy Gay.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Excellent. Thank you. That moves us to our
Thank you very much.
next item on the agenda. This is something I had mentioned during open forum, the Duxbury Rural and Historical Society New Harbor Rock ribbon cutting event. There will be liquor because we need to issue a permit for 9/12/25. I don't think we had anybody attending our meeting, right, to present this? Okay, may I have a motion?
Could I ask
Oh,
you a question
go right ahead.
before we get into it? Is there a fee involved in this for
Yes, I think
people to
we'll do-
attend?
There's a registration fee of like $10 or $20. Can't remember what.
Yeah.
I think it was a
Yes.
suggestion.
Yeah, suggested donation, but I think there's a cash bar, or cash bar truck, something like that. I don't know. There's a food truck, but I think it's got alcohol in it. Something like that.
I don't have any problem with people paying for their alcohol, but I do have a little bit of the town, the residents are funding this through the CPA tax, and it doesn't seem appropriate to ask for a fee to attend the ribbon cutting of something that they paid for with their tax money. So I just have a little bit of an issue with the,
Point
with the
taken.
fee to attend.
I think the suggested donation was for the reception that's going to be on the DRHS property, as opposed to the actual ribbon cutting itself on the Harbor Walk. But you're right. I understand what you're saying. Does anybody else have any comments or want to further what Amy has to say? Okay, may I have a motion?
I move that Ms. Susan Uti, as a representative of the Duxbury Rural and Historical Society, is granted a one-day wine and malt license for the new Harbour Walk ribbon cutting ceremony on Friday, September 12th, 2025, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on the lawn at the Nathaniel Windsor Junior House, 479 Washington Street, subject to the conditions of the license.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go with the vote, starting with Cindy. Roll call.
Yeah.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Likewise.
And no cohogs tonight, it looks like,
Yeah,
Fernando.
it looks like I've got a clean slate.
So that leaves us with one more. Rainey, there's nothing else, right? I don't see anything
No,
here on the
no town
agenda.
manager
No
report?
town manager's report?
Shoot.
Okay. I move to adjourn the select board meeting of September 8th, 2025, ending at 8:20.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Nice to roll call, please.
Yeah.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Likewise.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, pac-tv.